So, now we are in a transition period from that was to JP, but we start now with both of them on the stage. Beide auf der Bühne. Ihr könnt jetzt Fragen stellen. Wäre toll, wenn ihr ein paar Fragen zu stellen habt, an beide möglichst. Bevor wir dann eine Pause machen und dann die Autogramm-Session danach. Jetzt aber question and answer. JP, you may ask the question in German as well. For that, better in English or I need to translate.
Here we go, Doug. Question from the left side. On Cosmic Gunfight, in the Internet Pinball database, we can find a picture of a backglass. It's called Drgonfly, and it was also for the Cosmic Gunfight machine designed as a kind of a prototype. Do you know something about that?
Nothing.
Nothing. So you made no play field in a Drgonfly design?
I never did a Dragonfly design of any kind. This is the first I'm hearing the story.
Oh.
Occasionally, the designers who work with me, such as Steve Ritchie, have occasionally come to me and said, would you do it again? My hesitation is this. I was able to produce the artwork and the games that you have the most affection for as a result of the quality of the team that made it, not just me. The team style of pinball design is long gone. Stern can't do it, can't afford that whole process. There's no in-house art department there. You can attest of how difficult it is to do this. It was literally the quality of how Williams ran the design teams to create those games that made the 90s, that golden era, what it was. It wasn't just an artist that made the games great. It was a handful of people, about 5 people got together, a programmer, a designer, an artist, an engineer, and a musical composer, plus the dot matrix animators, and their priceless contribution to games. Without that relationships, without that dynamic between the team members to make those games what they were, all I am is a contractor on the outside making artwork. I no longer have the resources available to me that I had back then, because I wasn't alone working out of an office. I was part of the community at Williams with all kinds of tremendous resources. Digital resources, light tables, equipment, art supplies, all those things that made my job possible. To go back into pinball at any point in time, I wouldn't have to do it without that support. I'm on my own. I'm hesitant to do that because the amount of money I would ask to go back into doing that would be prohibitive. It would be a labor of love. They have to pay me a lot to do it, and who's got the deep pockets to pay Doug Watson to make more pinball art? Currently, nobody. Otherwise, I would love to do it if I could work in that team-based environment again, but it's just plain part of history now. So thanks for asking. Yeah. You?
Yeah, I realized earlier that there must have been some time when artists is going to some great pinball machines, great designers, great controllers about. You know Tim Elliot?
Yes.
With the design of the space station.
Yes.
The way that it's transformed the rest of the pinball machine.
I worked in the same room with Tim Elliot for years. What happened to him? Ask him. I didn't keep up with him. We weren't close friends. We had a friendship for a while there, and then we had a little falling out of that friendship. Tim Elliot could be a tough customer to deal with. He had some talent, but he was young and somewhat immature in his behavior. He came from a tough neighborhood growing up, so he had kind of like a tough street kind of personality to him, as opposed to I'm more of a intellectual, I'm afraid, to put a label on it somehow. I think things through. I have a deep education in history and the history of illustration and all this stuff, but I bring that to bear in my work. Tim was occasionally as something almost like a thug, a little bit. I'm sure he'd be offended to hear me say that, but the designers didn't like to work with Tim very much. They just did. They found him scary because he was a bodybuilder. He was kind of huge and he was sort of impatient and didn't have a lot of charm necessarily. Yeah.
Question for JP is, now as you have heard like 2 hours more of reference, how does your work of this imagination? Can you explain a little what you are doing these days compared with the drawing that you did?
Yeah, so my background is more in animation, and it's sort of a new title, motion graphics designer. I'm more of a graphic designer in time. I have to create 24 frames a second, and of course we have programs that help. But it's great to see, because I never met Doug, and we never crossed the roads because I started 3 years after he left Williams. I did an internship, but it's great to see. I didn't realize he had such an influence on all the games I played as a kid. I really like your philosophy in playfield design, because I'm going to talk about that in my seminar, is how I got into Joseph Jack as the animator, but since Greg left, the first game, Greg Ferris, there was no real art director at Joseph Jack, and I sort of got into that role and had to find it out myself, sort of. And I'm working from a distance, so I'm not working in Chicago in the office. I miss a lot of conversations or ideas that get around, and so I do a lot from a distance, and it's not easy, but I manage. It sort of feels like I'm getting teach like. Now I did this playfield wrong, I didn't do this good, I see what, and it makes sense. It's a process, and you have to...
You learn from every game you do a little bit about what would make it better, what a different approach would be better, and it takes time.
Right.
It took me a long time.
Also wie alle anderen, die habe gefragt, ob künstliche Intelligenz einen Einfluss auf Flipper haben wird. I say it's a question, do you think artificial intelligence will do your common job in the future?
Absolutely.
It's bad.
AI created artwork is going to kill the illustration profession. It'll just stone cold dead.
Yeah, it's going really fast. I don't think yet that we can say to AI, hey, here is the playfield, here's the canvas, please provide it with artwork. Maybe it's possible in 10 years. I have no idea, but then still, I see AI right now as a tool. Like 20, 30 years ago, people were against people commented on Photoshop artwork. And they didn't like it, but Photoshop is a tool that you use to create artwork. And I think now, and like you said, you painted over images and you make it your own. I think that's possible. You can use AI as a tool, as a guideline to create, to come up with new poses for characters, and then make it your own by painting over it and make it more interesting than just AI art. But it's getting creepy good.
I can explain why I think it'll creep replace illustrators. Economics. In other words, AI only knows what you program into it. With AI's access to ever greater art files, ever greater illustration files as its reference points to draw from, it will become so inexpensive to solve illustration needs for business of any kind. You don't need to hire an artist. AI will do it tonight. You can have it tomorrow. Even if it takes that long, and it's vastly less expensive. The people who are buying illustration for their needs really aren't going to care that much about whether you've got some famous illustrator or not. They just need illustration on something. AI will deliver that very fast, very cheaply, and no human is going to keep up with the economics of it.
But you still need someone that knows how to input into AI. You still gotta know the right prompts to
And it'll happen.
And at one point, AI will program itself, giving itself.
Yeah.
I would like to come back to the question about teams. So Doug hinted that teams are not working the same way anymore. I can't imagine there are no more teams, but do they now really have like request and delivery processes, or what's the current state of the art of teamwork in pinball design?
So for me, so at Jersey Jack, it's I created quite a big role for myself within the art department. But Stern, I know everybody works within in the Chicago area, and basically that's the same for Jersey Jack. I'm just someone on an island working at a distance. But we do hire artists from all around different spots. That's also, I guess, modern days where you have internet and you see and people can post their work online, and it used to be mainly, I guess, the Chicago area. So it's different times, and you're going to see that in my presentation as well. That Harry Potter, we worked with 5-6 Dutch people just on art and animation, and for Guns N' Roses we worked with 2-3 artists from one from LA, one from Florida, and one in Europe. So it's been hard because I've been trying to get a good art director in Chicago itself, because you need to see printed art when it comes in from the vendors, when it comes in, so they send our work from the US to me, so I can check colors. But I think that's pretty. It's not necessary. It's ridiculous to send that stuff, because if I need to make a change, they actually need to send another proof, so I can see if it's actually done right. So we need a good art team in Chicago but that's my vision. So I'm sort of trying to do my job. But
More subcontracting and checking the results.
Sorry again.
More subcontracting and checking the results inside of the
Yes, but it's until now I don't think we've found the right person.
One question. You mentioned that you have a game at your home place. Do you have a game room, and you don't have any pinballs at home? Not anymore. So
I miss them.
you miss them.
Very much. I used to have 5 prototypes of my own games in my home when I owned one back in the Chicago area. No longer own the home, no longer own those games.
What a pity.
Yes.
Oh, but using Pete, do you have any pinballs at home? Do you play pinball? How often?
Yes, I have room for 3, 4, and so I have every Jersey Jack game, but I put them at my friend's house and So it's nice because they need to get played, right? And otherwise they're in some office or and when I visit them, I can also flip them also.
We need more friends.
The same with all of us, yeah. Shuffling around pinballs at other places' homes, yeah.
Hello, Doug, you mentioned that earlier when we started in pinball, the games were basically, the inserts were there, the playfield were there, and then you had to design artwork following that layout that was already there.
You have to make a decision about, do I make artwork that completely ignores those inserts that the designer laid out? Do I struggle to figure out some way to use my graphics to make them coherent in some fashion before I even know what they mean? Because an insert's just an insert. I don't know what it means. I don't know the rules. So trying to do that work since, for instance, the 70s style. Oh, here's a whitewood board brought into advertising posters from Stern, from Gottlieb, from wherever. And there you go. You don't know what those things mean. How do I create effective artwork around inserts that just seem blindly just scattered around the game haphazardly? So when I had a chance to finally place those inserts myself, wow, did my games get better? Yes?
Yeah, so the question I was going for was for the newer games, especially in Jersey Jack, we've seen far more deeper integration of the artwork and the art package and the entire stuff. Guns N' Roses had like the drumsticks at the right and the guitar head in the middle and stuff like that. So how did that change over time that you get that deeper theme integration, and how did that change the artwork, work on it, on games?
For Guns N' Roses, a lot of these ideas were from Eric Meunier himself, the designer. It's second game? No, yeah, second game. And no, he is very creative in that sense, and comes up with a lot of these ideas himself. So I think that is a very good theme integration. But I was just thinking about how I was able, for instance, on The Hobbit, and now we have this big screen, and the screen has become part of the art package. And in some cases, I didn't see any of the artwork, for instance, on Dialed In. I needed to create these animations on screen. So with The Hobbit, I was able to do the art of the game and do the animations, and therefore you can use the same assets you're using on the playfield to make a connection to and to tell the rules, and that is really important. And in some games that didn't, there's a disconnect in some ways because of not sharing the art. Yeah. And it's a lot different than the D&D era or even the pre-D&D era where I actually was telling yesterday on Wizard of Oz, and licensing has become tougher. When we did Wizard of Oz, they had these rules to put trademark symbols on character names like Toto. It needs to have the TM. And then so on the screen, they also wanted the TM added to the name, which it's all, yeah. We also became better at communicating about what we're doing on the screen, and not every animation needs to have a legal notice on it. It's like, okay, if you show it once during a track mode, that should be fine for the rest of the game, but the first licensors. And then still we have to explain what the screen, how much goes into the screen, and what the modern pinball is like to many licensors who work for the first.
Different, their rules.
Yeah. It's so much different than 30 years ago.
If you need license for in 14, was the actor from
who would I require that license from?
Did you have a license?
No, just made it up. Lucky days to work. Listen, I appreciate the response to my speaking and to my clear artwork. Thank you so much. But you do have to understand, my last game, Attack from Mars, was 30 years ago. The technology of the industry has advanced and gone through so many changes. Here's our expert in what modern pinball is about. He's where you should direct your questions about what the future holds for pinball, what the factors are going to be that are going to affect pinball development. Not me. I'm glad that you appreciate my work, but I am ancient history.
I have a question. For you both, what was the most fun project so far in your history in your people life? The game you like most to work on?
For me, that would be my only non-Jersey Jack game, and that is the Big Lebowski. I did for Dutch Bünde. Yeah, that was great. Because the theme, that's one of my favorite movies, and we were able to use a lot of the assets, and it turned out really well with a young team, eager to make a pinball machine with our roots in your playfield design. I'm not sure if there's a Lebowski here, but yeah, okay, so I want to show Doc what we did there on the playfield, and we had a lot of passion for that.
Do you want me to complete that question, Jeff? By far my most favorite game to work on, and my most favorite game that I did, Attack from Mars. Indiana Jones, second, Terminator, third. Yeah, that's my favorite game.
The whole team to your, because you had so much creativity that you
That and the pleasure of how well that team got along with one another, how well I worked with Brian Eddy was absolutely a pleasure, a peak of my career, and so much of my artwork has that sense of heroic macho-ness to it in terms of its theme. To do a game with that much humor. As I pointed out, I voiced all the Martians. That's me. So having a chance to do something funny, seldom do you find that in my games. There's not a lot of humor in a lot of what I did, and have a chance to be that, to have the seriousness and the humor and the seriousness and the humor contrasted against one another, that made it a real pleasure to develop.
And that's what I'm missing from today's Flipper. There's not much humor. It's not comparable because you have the license that which tells you what you have to do. It's far away from that.
I like games that have a human personality, if not several, as they interact with one another. How delightful it was to have Arnold Schwarzenegger's voice coming out of T2. It was just great. Having my voice coming out of Attack from Mars, just great. That's a pleasure to make those kind of games. Somebody else?
If I may ask, what was your opinion about modern games? On modern games, let's say, for example, do you like the artwork, the technique, to hear it as a sport game, or is it too much to make
How many enemies do you think I want to make today? With an honest opinion about a lot of modern pinball art. It's busy, it's crowded, it's unfocused. It has an entirely different philosophy about what they value in the hierarchy of the intentions you're trying to make artwork for. It's a different era, it's created under different circumstances. As JP pointed out, he's over here in Europe making artwork for games in Chicago. He's so far removed from a lot of what that process is about. The independent contractors that are so much a part of modern pinball development, who are in this part of the world and that part of the world, and all they can do is just see what digital files they can send to one another and to try to make a coordinated package. That's a tremendously difficult situation to to bring out the talent is as a unified package of a game. You can have individual parts, like his animations can just make a game sing, but that's the animation package that he's in charge of. In terms of gameplay, cabinet design, what's on the plastic, you know, the coordination of that, the retirement of Greg Freyers at Stern is having an impact because he was holding that fort. He was in charge of getting those packages to come together with all these different talents. And as you pointed out, not having Greg around anymore hurts. Greg was good at what he did.
Yeah, I have a question to the Just Jack person.
JP.
Yes, I mean, costs are a big factor in pinball. We have now so many methods actually to cut costs, or we think they cut costs, but the machines are getting ever more expensive. Do you think we will reach a point eventually where we can produce cheap pinball machines? For example, if you just use AI for designing the game, the art, and using 3D printers for a cabinet, for example.
So I don't really go over the financing of a machine. Luckily, because I hate the finance stuff. But I do see that you know, I'm a pinball fanatic since I was young as well, growing up with games, and I do see that a lot of people are not able to reach the hobby anymore because it gets too expensive. And I'm not really for all the extra stuff that we put on our games, like toppers, pre-installed toppers, pre-installed side in our hard plates. Because that's driving up the price. I personally think we should offer, like now we did on the arcade edition, a basic model that people are, you know, still have the chance to buy a game that is not over expensive. But yes, the costs have been growing a lot, and that this is also now with the tariffs in the US. A lot of parts come from China, and so it's going to get more expensive, especially for manufacturers, of course. But eventually, that's going to be the customers paying for it. I think so. But again, I don't do all the calculations of cost.
And I have another rather mundane question. Do you think that would you agree with the statement that the Big Lebowski felt very much like a Williams machine?
Sorry, again, yeah. That's, yeah, I think that's a combination of us using a DMD kind of screen. Resembles back, but yeah, like I said, we grew up with the 90s games. That's what we liked, and that's why I guess we chose for that art style. And yeah, I don't know why not our manufacturers don't go back to that, try to go back to that style. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, let's vote. Let's vote.
Okay, last question before we make a break and then start the last question. Anybody have any question?
I have a question for you, Doctor. You mentioned in the early 80s, the teams were very, they were not linked to each other. So you can order for making artwork for pinball machine and any
I think I understand your question. I'll do my best to answer it. When the manufacturers decided to start having their own in-house art departments and not use advertising posters, as they had for decades, Bally started it first in, I don't know, 82 or 72, somewhere around in there. They started under Paul Ferris, their own art department. They weren't teamed yet. It wasn't that different from ad posters. The artists at Bally were not involved in the team process of game development at Bally. I know this because I was there for 3 years from 83 to 85. Early 83, late 85. That's some 3 years. Williams, under Ken Fidesna, the president, the art department used to be in the front of the building, and then you had the factory, and then you had the design department way in the back of the building. So the designers, to communicate with the artists, had to traverse the entire building. It was time consuming, they didn't like doing it, and they didn't particularly like the artists. Ken called for the art department to be moved from the front of the building to join the engineering department in close proximity. That's why the 90s games are what they are. Was that decision to put the artists, the designers, the mechanical engineers, the programmers within walking distance of 2 minutes of one another. So when you had an idea, you could go share it right now. That's what I mean about the team development that no longer exists, which is why I don't want to do it anymore, because that's what made the game so good. It what made making them as fun as it was. That was gone when the Williams Art Department closed down. So now that situation no longer exists, economics dictate what pinball development is right now. It requires independent contractors like JP and like his friends who he contracts to get other parts of the game done. So it's a scattered process that can be very uncoordinated if you don't have somebody like a Greg Freres in charge of making sure things all come together as a package. It's a big job. That situation being lacking now is hurting. I think JP will agree with me about that.
He's trying to do the same thing as Greg did as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's your job now. You move yourself.
So that position, if I understood this correctly.
Apparently they like my way of working. And off between that position. I didn't really.
Oh, so it came automatically more or less. So, thank you very much for the Q&A session.